Now I get to show you the real power of Mapshaper. We're going to load in the latest COVID case data right into that same map. And we're going to be able to do all of that filtering. Remember back in the first week when I had those Google Sheets open and I had to filter by date and copy and paste that whole table? We're going to do all of that, but just in a simple make command using Mapshaper. In this project, I gave you the county's shape files over here, and even the New York Times data I brought in filtered and all ready to go as covidcounties.csv. Now, in your world, you will more than likely not have somebody prepare that for you. You would want to go get the shape files that you need and the data that you needed, and then you would want to join them. And you can do that all with makefiles, which is really great. And let me show you how to do that. First, I'm going to close this preview pane here so we have a little bit more room to work in. And if you scroll down, I've actually typed this out for you already. You can see it's called fresh map. So the command will be make fresh map. There's some stuff that we need to do here, and I just want to show you how I made this so that you can reference it and you can actually use this very same code, just changing some of the values. So the first thing I needed to do was to get the shape file of the counties, right? So assume that we don't have it here, it hasn't been provided to us. And where do I get those? Well, if you go to bit.ly/mapping-census, you end up at this US Census website, which has a lot of shapefiles on it. There are all sorts of files, but the one that we want is down here, counties. So these are the US counties, and they have 3 different resolutions. You can tell just by looking at the size of these files that the top one is the most detailed. It's also 11 megabytes. The bottom one is the least detailed, and it's just under 1 megabyte. So that's the one we're going to use for this exercise. But just know that the boundaries of those counties are not as detailed as they could be. But that's okay. We'll go with that. So what I'm going to do here is just right-click on that shapefile address. So that's the address of the zip file that contains all of the files that are part of the shapefile. And so I copy that. If you're on a Mac, it's a control click to get that. And that link that I just copied is actually this URL right here. And what that is doing is it's sitting inside a curl command. So we have curl and then the quotes, and that URL is right there. And what curl does, curl is, like Mapshaper. It's a command you can use on the command line. It's in most computers, and you can download a web page, and that's what I'm doing here. But in this case, I'm just downloading the file at that link. And so we have the link here. We have -o, which just like the Mapshaper command means output. So we're going to output it into the TMP directory. We're going to call it download.zip. So we're going to download this file. We're going to put it in this TMP. It's just temp directory. It's a standard practice just to throw things that you're going to need for a moment and not need later. So we're going to download that. And then we need to unzip it. So there's another command called unzip. That's also just in the computer. And in this case, the -o for unzip actually means overwrite. So when it unzips this download.zip, which is right here, it will unzip it and overwrite the files no matter, even if I've done it before. So that's okay. -d here means the directory destination, and I want it to go as well into the TMP directory. Okay, so that downloads the shape files, and these are actually the same exact shape files that were here that I gave you. I named them a little bit more nicely than they named them, but it's the same files. One thing I'll just note here, note that there's no backslash at the ends of these lines. That's because the end of this curl command ends with this line. We have not extended this curl command, and the next line we have a different command, which is unzip. Down here, we have Mapshaper, but this Mapshaper command goes actually all the way to this last line. And so that's why we have to have these slashes here. So the code knows, oh, I have to keep going. This command isn't done until I get to the end. Okay. So we have our, we're going to have our shapefile with these commands. And then we want to get the New York Times data. Now, remember, if you go to bit.ly/mapping-data-2, you end up with that big, huge CSV file. And in the first week, we had to go in and filter those out. So we'll have to do that too here. But this is just the raw data going back the last 30 days. And this URL for that data is right here. I've put that here. This is this big long URL. And again, using curl to get that data, that file, and then we're outputting it as tmp/latest.csv. So that's going to be stored in the temp directory, and we're going to call that file latest.csv. Okay, so that means we will have both the shape files, bing, and the data CSV files, and then we can go ahead with our Mapshaper join, which we did before. So let's just walk through that as well. So here we have the Mapshaper command, the I for input, and the file that we want to input. And as I think I mentioned, the names for these county files are a little bit more complicated, but when you unzip this, this is the main shapefile that you want to get. Okay. The other thing that we do next is that with this shapefile in hand, we've inputted it. We're going to go through each shape in the shapefile and add another property to each shape. And you can do that with the each command in Mapshaper. And what this does is it's using a little JavaScript code, but basically it's saying, make a new column called USA plus GeoID. And I want to make that out of the literal characters USA dash plus the variable, the existing property that we know exists in these shapefiles called GeoID. The reason I'm doing this is that so then in my shapefile, I have a column that looks like this, right? Remember the New York Times adds USA dash ahead of their county identifier. And this column here is the second column. It's actually lowercase GeoID up here. So what I'm doing is in the shapefile, I'm making a column that will be able to match to this GeoID column. Okay? And I do that in Mapshaper with, it'll apply it to each row, each shape in the shapefile. The next line is about joining. It's just like we did last video with a little bit of an extra twist. So the first part is -join. This is the file that we're going to join. Remember, we downloaded that over here. This is, remember back in that first week, we had to go through and filter out in our Google spreadsheet, filter out just for yesterday's date. That's what we're going to do here, but we can do it in code. So here, the command is the where command, where equals, and then it's this fancy thing here. What I'll just say is this is a nice way to look for the date that we can set. And we can actually set that up here with this variable. So if you look at my computer screen here, on the day I'm recording this, it's Sunday, May 29th, 2022. So I want yesterday's date. When you do this, you can put in the yesterday for whenever you're watching this, and it should work just fine. But I'm going to put in 2022 and 05 and 28, which is yesterday's date for me. And that will get inserted in place of this thing right here. That's what's happening there. So it's basically going to say where date equals that. And it'll just pull that right out of the CSV as it loads it in, which is really helpful. Finally, we need to tell it how we're doing our join, what keys we're using. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to match the shapefile property that we built over here which is this USA plus GeoID column, and the GeoID, lowercase GeoID, in the CSV. Remember, the order of the keys is the shapes and then the data. So in the shapes, we have that column, which we made, and then we have GeoID, which is existing in the New York Times data. We're going to do a classify just like we did before. This is exactly the same line as we used in the last video to classify our colors. There's an extra line here that I've added. You can output this your Mapshaper data several times. And in this case, I just stuck in a useful thing, which is I'm making a GeoJSON file here, but I'm using the JSON extension at the end. So it needs to know what kind of JSON I want. And the answer to that is GeoJSON. So this is actually a very simple, easy way to output a JSON file. So I have that. I could use it for Mapbox. I could use it for any other analysis that I wanted to do. I'll have that GeoJSON file. And it's important actually that I do it before I change the projection. Otherwise, it'll change the projection for this JSON file, and that can make things messy. So before we change the projection into that nice looking Albers USA map, I added that output line. Again, this just outputs a file called public/freshmap.json. Then I change the projection to Albers USA, and then I output the freshmap.svg. So let's give it a go. Make freshmap. Everything runs, and it's working. It's working. Great, it wrote both of these files, freshmap.json and freshmap.svg. Let's just scroll back and look and see what it did. It auto-detected the categories that we want. That's great. It made these joins. It made all of the joins that we expected before. And it also found a whole bunch of records that were skipped. Remember, we have 30 days worth of data and county data for every day. So it's skipping all of those because these are the rows that are not yesterday. So it has skipped all of these rows for us, which is good. These are the colors that it's used. These are the breaks that it has used. And here's the distribution of those colors and breaks. And then it let us know that it output those files. And if I copy freshmap.svg and go down to the toolbar below and open my preview pane again, this is the previous map, so we don't want that one. But if I delete that, put in freshmap.svg, and we have it. There it is. This is yesterday's data mapped. And so basically what you could do, you could imagine that if somebody said, well, we need a new map, or we need a fresh map, you could go in, change this date to the new yesterday, and all you have to do is type make fresh map, and it will go get the shapefiles it needs, go get the data it needs, do the join that you want to make, and output both the JSON file and the SVG file, and it's ready to go. I encourage you, again, change this date. Make this date the yesterday for whenever you're looking at this video, and then just type make fresh map and hit enter, and you will get an SVG and a JSON file of the COVID cases conditions in the US for that date. This technique, by the way, is essentially how I made this COVID case animation for CNN. Every day, combining the data with the shapes to make a frame of this little movie. So you could do it just to update your page, or you can save those updates and make a movie out of it. So that's it for this class. Thank you so much for joining me. We covered a lot of ground and sort of scratched the surface on 3 different services: Data Wrapper, Mapbox, and Mapshaper. I hope it gives you the foundations to explore more mapping and that you make many awesome data maps in the future.